Hi everyone, my name is Masafumi, a Rubyist from Japan. I'm honored to be here, and today I'm gonna introduce Kaigi on Rails, a new tech conference focusing on Ruby on Rails. Right, so let's get started. Here we go. Okay, so first of all, who am I? So my name is Masafumi. So my screen name is Okura Masafumi. Okura is my family name, and Masafumi is my given name. But in Japan, family name comes first, and first name comes last, right? So it's kind of confusing. I'm a freelance web application developer living in Japan and working for Japanese companies. And I do some OSS activities, like I contributed some pull requests to Rails, Ruby, Rack, and I also author some gems of my own, including like JSON serializer. So if you are interested in, please come talk to me. And I'm also a organizer of some meetups, communities, and conference. So I'm the chief organizer of Kaigi on Rails, which is the primary topic of this talk. And I'm also an founder and organizer of some Ruby meetups like grow.rb and taku.rb, and a few local Ruby meetups such as shibuya.rb and tama.rb. Right. What am I talking about today? First, I'd like to introduce Kaigi on Rails, which I believe is new to you. And secondly, I'd like to talk about motivation behind Kaigi on Rails. And then I'd like to talk about some problems and difficulties behind it. So I'd like to mention now that it's not offline conference. So it went off online. So it was, there was its own difficulties, right? And lastly, I'd like to introduce future plan of Kaigi on Rails. All right. So what's Kaigi on Rails? Kaigi on Rails is a new tech conference focusing on Ruby on Rails and web development, started last year, 2020. It was started as an online conference by accident. Here's a website, which is pretty, normal URL, but the design currently is pretty, fancy, and I love it. So it started last year, and Kaigi on Rails 2020 was a one-day and one-track conference. So it was, the smallest conference. It was driven by a small team. It was only 7 people. And Kaigi on Rails was composed of 14 wonderful talks, including 2 keynotes from Tenderlove and Akira Matsuda. It was a domestic conference, but we accepted 1 English talk from Taiwan. Why Kaigi on Rails? Why yet another talk conference? So Kaigi on Rails was created because of 3 key factors. So one is environment. There's no talk conference focusing on Ruby on Rails in Japan before. It's kind of interesting because Japan is famous for Ruby, right? And of course, there are so many awesome Ruby and Rails devs. But although there are conferences for other famous web frameworks such as Django or Laravel, but there's not a conference about Rails in Japan. Actually, there was a plan of Rails Kaigi, but it was dropped. And the second factor is my personal motivation. I realized somehow that, I had so many ideas that I want to realize, and that could be real with the New Tech Conference. Oh, then it might be a good idea to start my own, right? And the last factors was friends and mentors. So people around me pushed me to make Kaigi Rails real. There are like so many people push me, including some people from Ruby Kaigi. So it's not like we compete with Ruby Kaigi or other tech conferences. We'd like to be part of it. And why are me? Why was it me? Why are you the founder of Kaigi Rails? Well, the primary background is I've been grown up by the community, I believe, since 2015. And I love the community. And I felt that it's time now to give back something to the community. And for me, although I've already started my own Ruby meetups, I felt I could do something more. And for me, that was Kaigi Rails. And job matters because I'm a freelancer, which means, I'm free. Not free, but I can make time when others are too busy. That's important because not me, some people sometimes are just too busy to join meetings about Kaigi Rails, and that's fine. But it's not good that I skip the weekly meetings, for example. Capacity. So capacity. So I've been a co-organizer of a few conferences before, which is v0.1 2019 and a few others. So yeah, I don't want to say that I know what to do, but definitely I know something about being an organizer of the conference. And of course, relationship between friends. I have friends who help me throughout the process of planning and doing Kaigi Rails, which is really essential. Without relationships, I could not build the team. And I had some ideas, as I mentioned before. What was it? There are many ideas I had, but the most important 3 ideas were: 1, content. So Ruby Kaigi, as you know, is great, but Ruby Kaigi is so to say, the highest, the greatest tech conference of the world. All the talks are really like technical and technically deep and precise, which is absolutely great. But for newcomers, they are too difficult. Actually, sometimes it's too difficult for me, and I believe that it's too difficult for some of you, right? It's not mystery. It's not mystery. Just like Ruby Kaigi is such conference. But I'd like to have one conference that's different from Ruby Kaigi. But also, I'd like to have emotionally motivating talks in Kaigi on Rails. So my preference is balanced content. The second idea is position. Position means I'd like Kaigi on Rails to be the first conference for newcomers, for people who graduated from coding school and became a programmer. But I'd like Kaigi on Rails also to be a great conference for experienced devs, which means it's also balanced, right? The first conference for newcomers and the great conference for experienced devs. To achieve this goal, we need to balance the content of the talk or the difficulty of the talks. So my future idea about Kaigi on Rails is it's going to be a web conference, not only Ruby on Rails. It will cover varieties of topics, such as Ruby language, which, well, if the talk is about Ruby's deep dive, then it's better to submit a proposal to Ruby Kaigi, not Kaigi on Rails. But for example, like Ruby's so to say pitfalls for newcomers, like this kind of topic is welcomed. Like front-end DevOps protocols, whatever about web will be welcomed in the future. Currently, we primarily focus on Rails, but in the future, it will be a web conference. Okay, so were they achieved? No, we turned online. So it changed somehow. Because of course COVID-19, but we didn't give up. We turned online because the timing was good. We faced COVID-19 soon after we made a team. So we started to launch the Kaigi on Rails team on February, I believe. And soon after that, we faced COVID-19. So we just decided, okay, we didn't do so many things. Why not just go online? It was kind of lucky for us. And we were free. We didn't have anything to lose because it was the very first time for Kaigi on Rails to take place. So nothing to be compared. So yeah, actually we decided to go online and we talked about the fact that we go online. And we said, oh, okay, it's practice for the real offline conference in the future. Or it's practice for the another more long, big online conference. So it was at first practice for us, but it turned out that we made it not practice, but real conference. As you know, there are some difficulties about online conferences, such as the concentration problem, talk length problem, talk format, like recording or live, or questions and answers. Should we have one? If we have one, how should we process? Even more difficulties, sponsors. What the sponsor benefit anyway? There's no booth or physical spaces. What about parties? What about party? We love parties, but now we drink beer ourselves in our own room, right? But I want to emphasize that we used a service called Spatial Chat, which went pretty successful. So next time we'll also use Spatial Chat. And internationalization, so time gap, which is a terrible problem about international online thing. For example, I registered some international conferences taking place in the States. And in the States, it's when it's morning or afternoon in the States. In Japan here, it's midnight. So it's not impossible, but really hard to join them in real time. So the opposite is true, right? If it's afternoon in Japan, then it's midnight in the States. So to consider this problem seriously, my conclusion is it's not realistic to have international conferences online. I know it's possible, but as a participant, I found it very hard to do so. So what the future of Kaigi on Rails look like? So then this year, Kaigi on Rails will be still online. Well, I know there are some possibility to have offline conference late 2021. But yeah, I'd like to be conservative now. To be conservative about having the conference. If it's online conference, we'll be definitely able to have better online conferences this year than last year. And it will be hopefully 2-day conference. Last year we had 1-day, 1-track conference, and it turned out that it's kind of too busy. It was great. It was packed, but it was busy. So hopefully this year it's 2-day conference. And this is the sad thing that it will be still domestic conference because we have not enough capacity to translate all the contents from Japanese to English. But we're planning to accept more English talks. So if you are interested in submitting a proposal, then we'd love to welcome you. By the way, translating English talks subtitles are free last year because there were only one English talk. So I myself translated what he says and into the Japanese subtitles. It was fun. I'm not sure if I do the same thing this year. But yeah, like we can do it. And this is an important topic. It's about sponsors and participants, relationships and communications. So this year it will be more interactive conference. We'd like to have workshops, joint events, for example, Rails girls in Kaigi Rails. It's just a plan right now, but last year we realized that without interactions and communications, it doesn't feel like conferences. So this year, workshop and joint events will be rare. And finally, the future of Kaigi Rails, not this year, but next year, 2023 and 4, it will be fully international conference after it goes offline. So as I mentioned before, when it's online conference, it's hard to welcome all the people from all over the world online. So it will be domestic conference. But after it goes offline, it will be fully international conference. At least I'd try to achieve this goal. And the conference will value interactivity and communications among people, although it's online. So this is a challenge for us. But I know it's possible. I know it's possible because there are so many interesting tools around, and there are so many, great services around. So I think it's achievable. And I'd like Kaigi Rails to be the place for various kind of people to come together and have fun. After all, I'm the community guy, and this is one of the shapes of community in the online era. Okay, so this is what I wanted to talk. So see you next time.